The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Lines are open. The floor is yours. Call 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp 166 177. Or email studio at manxradio.com. Lots of talk yesterday about the speed limit on the main Douglas to Peel road, especially through Union Mills, Glenfine, Drogheda and Crosby. Just to follow up on that, Ray dropped a note in to say, further to what your correspondent said yesterday, as a resident of Crosby, it's easy to observe the very small number of drivers who comply with the speed limit on the main road through Crosby. The road in front of them is empty and there's always a long line of traffic behind them. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Ray? Your thoughts on this? And the whole point of speeding on the Isle of Man, bearing in mind it's not that far to anywhere. Does anybody actually need to speed? Is there a need for this, or is it psychological, do you think? Regarding the Tesco thing, this is Texter 247. I was in Wainwright yesterday, noticed Tesco's eggs on sale there, on the shelf next to Gelling's eggs, which, needless to say, I bought because I'm keeping it local. I think, personally, if there's a Manx option next to the Tesco option on the shelf, then the general public will go for the Manx option, because it is local. We'll find out, really. There's been lots of question in Tynwald today regarding Tesco. Lots of questions as to what's going to happen with food producers on the Isle of Man, whether they'll have an access to market via Tesco. We'll find out soon. I have to say, we've been trying for ages. Lots of people say, why don't you get anything from Tesco? We ask them all the time, but they won't speak in public. At some point, I think we'll obviously hear from Tesco, but let's just say they've probably got a lot on their plate at the moment. The population of the red squirrel in the UK is falling dramatically, says Texter 470. So surely it's about time we introduced the red squirrel to the Isle of Man. That would help the red squirrel, something that's been mentioned many times, whether or not we should have the red squirrel on the Isle of Man. What do you think about it? Bray Hill, apparently, is there's lots of speeding, apparently going up Bray Hill. Is that true? Is there speeding up Bray Hill? Texter 958 with that one. And do you remember we talked yesterday about fermented herring? The fact that Manx herring is being landed on Manx shores, big deal after 25 years. And, how do you eat herring? What do you do them? Lots of... Thank you for the many... The one who sent me the Hugh Fernley Whittingstall recipe for herring. And we talked about fermented herring yesterday, which apparently tastes quite nice, but smell absolutely vile. When cruising around Scandinavian countries, we weren't allowed to come back on the boat with any fermented herring because they smell absolutely terrible, says Annie. The Hugh, if you're interested, by the way, the Hugh Fernley Whittingstall recipe is herring, potato and watercress salad. My favourite, says 450, is grilled herring with poached egg. Do you remember we heard yesterday somebody emailed in to say the best steak with herring mash? Surf and turf. High protein can all be sourced locally. It'd be good to see it in cafes on the Isle of Man. We wait and we see. This morning I saw an adult riding an electric scooter in the Strand. Isn't that illegal, says David H. In fact, that we've had many messages about people, and I don't know what's happened recently, but there seem to be many more people riding bicycles on pavements, and certainly up and down Strand Street. And one the other day, I was walking down Victoria Street in Douglas, and there was a grown man, middle-aged man, on an electric bike riding uphill on the pavement. You couldn't ride uphill on the road, it's a one-way system, but riding uphill on the pavement. I thought it was illegal to have a push bike on a pavement. Just a thought. And if we're heading towards more people using bicycles, will that mean we have more bicycle police watching for people riding on pavements? So isn't riding an electric scooter in the Strand illegal, says David as well. Thanks also to let's have a look here, Texter 777, DOI vehicles speed through Union Mills worse than others. Well, 777, we'd have to say, have you got any evidence for that, apart from saying it as that? I mean, if you've got any photos or anything, by all means, I would imagine DOI will be happy to know if anybody was speeding in a DOI vehicle. And again, messages yesterday regarding the speeding in Williston and parking, a free-for-all basically, and people using Williston as a shortcut to avoid the St Ninian's lights, work vans and HGVs, and a parking maze basically, with buses literally crawling through Williston because people are parking here, there and everywhere. Cars parked blocking footpaths. It's a nightmare. That was Joe who mentioned that, and there was more following the programme regarding parking. Always a vexed question. I mean, the answer is, of course, that we've got far more cars than we ever have had previously, but that's always going to go up. We're getting more and more vehicles, maybe even more and more electric vehicles, but they're still vehicles and they still have to park somewhere. The question also about people parking work vans at home instead of taking their own car, to work, picking up a work van, leaving the van back at the work. So basically, some companies are outsourcing their van parking to private areas and private estates. Everything comes down to price, says 505. Unless the government subsidises local food, people are going to buy the cheapest. It's not rocket science, says 505. But is that really the answer? Thank you, Pammy, for that on 505. Speeding is a psychological issue, says Bob, 378. Speeding, psychological. It's indicative of today's impatience. As somebody who is a permanent passenger, every single driver I'm in a car with gets frustrated at being stuck behind cyclists, horses, tractors, or other drivers. They think they own the road. Driving a car seems to give people a sense of entitlement, says Bob. I think it's important, says Richard 653, to clear up misinformation given out on Friday about the WHO, the World Health Organization, or future pandemics. Says Richard, the WHO, says Richard, is not going to be able to enforce lockdowns in countries in a power grab. Countries will decide what the pandemic accord says, and countries alone, and countries will implement the accord in line with their own national laws. No country will cede any sovereignty to the WHO. Its first consideration, and countries will implement the accord in line with their own national laws. No country will cede sovereignty to the WHO, the World Health Organization. Its first consideration, listed on page 4, aims to reaffirm the principle of sovereignty of state parties in addressing public health matters. I think that's basically what Dan Davis and Jane Paul Wilson said on Friday. Richard said, any accord signed in future will ring and research, as well as the production and distribution of medical and public health countermeasures like vaccine, medicines and diagnostics. Thank you. And a message in also from John says, the herring mash, was that on the train dining carriage? Apparently, yes, it was. John on 557. I think it was Nigel who said they'd had this steak and herring mash. I don't know. Did you? Who's tried it? What is it? Maybe that's the way to go in the future. ShopRite might have gone, but also goes with it the choice of Sainsbury's and Waitrose and Greggs. Do they still have Waitrose? I thought they got out of the John Lewis partnership thing. Anyway, certainly Sainsbury and certainly Greggs and Iceland and Subway will go in the future, although who knows, perhaps Subway will stay in some form or other. Balafesson Road in Russian is like a racetrack, says Joe. Some people need to calm down, says 901. People who aren't confident on the roads learn by going on the pavement. As long as they're not obstructing anybody, what's the problem, says 901. I thought it was against the law, though, to cycle on the pavement. I thought you weren't allowed to cycle. And certainly, I think there's a bylaw in Douglas to say you can't cycle down Strand Street. And there is a difference, I take it. A toddler on a small cycle with stabilizers is different to a grown man or woman hurtling down Strand Street. Strand Street that may have, 8 people abreast walking down it. It's against the law. And the more you see people or other cyclists see other cyclists cycling, then it becomes suddenly the new norm, i.e. if that person can cycle down there, why can't I? We got lots of speeders through Solby at times of the day, both through the 40 and 30 mile an hour limits, says 899. It's an accident waiting to happen, certainly during school term time. And you get the feeling, don't you, that unless something actually happens regarding speeding, there's always a reaction or a fight back, if you like, when something bad happens. Now, hopefully nothing will happen regarding speeding accidents. We have had them in the past. People have had dreadful injuries because they've been speeding. They've caused dreadful injuries when they've hit somebody when they're speeding. But really, particularly when the technology is here with us nowadays, is now the time to look at speed cameras. I'm sure the Treasury would rub their hands together. There are certain speed cameras in the UK that collect about £1 million a year. £1 million. Free money, isn't it? Now, I'm not saying we get anywhere near that, but is it something we should look forward to? It was surprising to see some Tesco own brand produce in ShopRite yesterday, and the price difference was astonishing, particularly as they took 25% off Iceland and Sainsbury's frozen stock, says Dick. Don't tell everybody, they'll all be there. Given how much we like saving money on the Isle of Man, when people who've probably never been in Tesco see they save £20 or £30 on their weekly shop, well, people will draw their own conclusions. You can take the money you've saved and buy Manx at the farmer's market, or even Gelling's egg shed in Baldrine if you want. Thank you, Richard. Good to hear from you. We've had lots of speeders, more also confirming what's happening through Solby. Is it the Solby Strait or is it further on, I wonder? Eric said, and don't forget, lots of work vans have drivers who maybe call overnight and weekends. When you get water main, do you want the plumber to be there as soon as possible? Point taken, Eric, but surely not everybody. If you live on an estate and you have somebody with a work van parked next to you, how often, be honest, how often do they get called out in the middle of the night or out of hours? And is it worth taking up what is effectively a residential parking space with a work vehicle? What's going to happen to the memorial plaques after 10 years? What happens if there are no friends or family to pay for the next 10 years, says DS 863. I think it's a very bad decision. The decision by Douglas City Council to start charging after 10 years for the memorial plaques in the cemetery. There are dozens of 50,000 a year plus hospital jobs being advertised, and assuming wages aren't the issue, surely government needs to provide housing for new medics and nurses to come here. Well, we need housing in general, it's not just for those. I was in ShopRite yesterday and they've got lots of Tesco stuff already, says Chris, in the Port Erin pet shop. Bread came in on Saturday, apparently. Thank you for that, Christopher. According to the Watchdog this morning, EV bikes can burst into flames and possibly cause a lot of damage, says Frank. Actually, I had a couple of messages in which I'll get to shortly regarding what the steam package protocols are regarding electric vehicles. And heaven forfend, what would happen if there happened to be an electric fire on board one of the vessels? But Juan's first on today. Hi, Juan.
How are you today, Andy?
Well, it's one of those things. It's not half bad. It's a bit breezy, but the weather's going to get a lot worse. So everybody's, buying bags of sugar and bread and dry pasta and what have you.
Yes, yeah, getting ready for war. I just a couple of things I was picking up on. Just on Eddie was talking yesterday about streams and power generation from streams, and it just crossed my thought. There's one stream that we haven't got at the moment, and that's a good revenue stream to do all this stuff. So was it Richard that just messaged before about the World Economic Forum?
I'll try and find it for you. No, but go on.
Yeah, I think they spoke about the dreaded WF for a long time now, and I think a lot of people are now starting to realise that the situation is, I think what you said with Dan Davis when we were speaking on Friday, that the government have the right to do whatever, and that's okay. The problem that you've got with the World Economic Forum from their international advertising, which is there to be seen, is they've basically said that they have, in their words, infiltrated most governments around the world. Infiltrated being an interesting word to use. And remember, from their Young Leaders programme of the World Economic Forum came out of Macron, Blair, Trudeau and Ardern. All came from there. So them words are probably quite true, that Schwab is saying that they've infiltrated all around the world. So the thing is, to Richard, is yes, are the governments going to go along with it because the agenda for the World Economic Forum is already in place? So that was just my point on that. Just a bit of housekeeping on Friday. I did ask a question to Jane Poole-Wilson about the digital ID bill, but I think she must have forgotten about that one. But the Orsted report that I mentioned, I believe, just trying to clarify what I said on Friday, because she said that there categorically was no changes in it. I believe it was the inspectors from Orsted that were commissioned to write a report by the government. So it wasn't an Orsted report per se. Am I right with that, Andy? Do you know?
A report on what?
Report on the fostering, childcare, and
right. So now it's Ofsted. Orsted are the wind people. It's Ofsted, yeah.
Yeah. So the report was inspectors were commissioned by government to do that. But my question is with that, when we've got so many people on the ground, good people who are dealing with the probation, foster care and the problems that we have with our youth and children, and they flag up all this stuff and red flagging it, why are we spending out money bringing in private commissioned inspectors to do an inspection when the people on the ground floor already know what the problems are?
Interesting. And when our own children's champion, when Kerry Sharp is saying it, and she's been a voice in the wilderness for a long time, Kerry has been working hard, to get to the bottom of how we're actually treating our children. And I think because it's childhood is a non-tangible outcome. You can't count it, you can't number it, you can't file it. It's ephemeral. And the fact that some children on the Isle of Man are being denied an equal opportunity is something I think we should all look at very carefully.
And I think, the government are taking on all this new ideas and agendas for different things, and they should, this is part of getting your house in order, and I'll speak on the tourism thing tomorrow with Ranulph, but this is about getting your house in order, and it's the same with the tourist side of things. We've got a problem which has flagged up with our workers here, and like I said to Jane Poole Wilson on Friday, we've got middle management, which the report is critical of, and higher management who don't seem to be doing the job in respect of looking after our local people. They're just here, take a good salary and disappear because they've got no affinity to the island and our future, our people. And this is now second generational problems that's coming through. So I hope that the people or Timbold and the members start talking to the people on the ground floor who are actually dealing with these problems. She mentioned MASH. MASH is not working, doesn't seem to be working, doesn't seem to be coercive with the police, and it's not working properly. And there's a lot of other services which are not working. Social workers are not going to court. They're doing more work with the families because the court actions are getting overruled, their care plans.
Well, I didn't get to one question somebody sent in last Friday, and it was regarding some probation officers working remotely from England.
And this is my point, Andy, on what I said before. These people have no affinity to the Isle of Man. You know, people working remotely, and a lot of the team now, they're desk sharing. They're working from home 2 or 3 days a week and desk sharing. So it's kind of not sitting right. And I think, if it's not nipped in the bud, we're going to suffer in our next generation down the line. And we talk about looking after our children and our children being the most important thing. And, as I've been going on about the sex education bill, all these things are important to the future of our island as a community. Yeah. So I do hope that they take it on board and talk to the people on the ground floor, and they've got a lot of the answers.
Okay, all right, thanks, Stuart.
Take care, Andy.
Good to hear from you. And Kay's with us now. Hi, Kay.
Hello.
How are we doing, Kay?
I'm fine. I'm just ringing up with a completely different subject.
Oh, go on, yeah.
And it's to do with disabled people who are over 65.
Okay.
Now, I've spoken to quite a lot. I'm disabled myself. And once you're over 65 and not on benefits, you can't get anything at all. I couldn't even get a car to take my wheelchair. I can't get physio. I can't get psychological things because I had a major trauma happen to me in Nobles. And I'm disabled. Now, I've spoke to several people who are in the same situation as me. I spoke to a lady the other day who had a stroke and she was sent home. She had a bath and she couldn't even get in a bath. Her husband had to take her to Peel swimming pool to shower her.
And how long has this been going on, Kay?
Well, mine's been going on for 4 years that I can't get anything at all. And don't say to me, get in touch. I've got in touch with Stu Peters, the other one down here who's from around. She was on the radio the other day. I've got in touch with Laura Hooper, who passes it on to somebody else, Stu Peters passed it on to Sarah Maltby, whatever her name is. And all they do is send me the forms that I've already read myself, that I'm not entitled to it. And I've also sent to Alf Cannon, and it was last August, and never got a reply.
Okay, so you raised it, so you're over 65, is that right?
When this happened to me, when I got paralysed, I used to be able to walk and do everything, and I went up for a procedure and come out of Nobles paralysed. So that's the short thing of it. But I can't get anything. I can't drive a car. My partner wasn't quite 65 at the time, so I said, well, he could get the car because he'd be driving. No, it doesn't work like that. If you've got so much money, you can't do it. Now, if I was on benefits, I'd get the whole caboodle. I went to my doctor regarding wanting a psychologist because of the trauma. It's like post-traumatic stress. It's what's happened to me. And he said, oh, yes, I'll do a referral. Oh, I'm sorry, you're over 65, you don't qualify. So I have to pay £100 for every hour session I go to. I pay for private physio to come in my home. So it's just discrimination.
So Where is it at the moment? Have you just left it with the politicians or with the civil servants? And are they
Well,
just
I've gone to every politician there is. What am I supposed to do? Go outside the quays with a banner saying I'm over 65 and I don't qualify? And I want to know. And I've lived on this island now, and I'm over 65, quite a bit over 65 now. And I've lived here since I was 17 years old.
There's something. I'm not stating the absolutely obvious, but there's something not right with all this. So, have you managed to get any sense out of anybody?
No, there's a law what was passed. I think it was in 1981, 82, which I looked at online. That should be for discrimination, because they paid some MHKs out, didn't they? For not being able to work because they were over 65.
I think that was a couple of MHKs who lost their seats. Yes, they said they were entitled to a payoff.
Yes. So why do they get it? And yet the likes of me and a load of other ones, and I know there's a lot of people in my situation who can't get it.
And is this just because you happen to have funds?
What sort of funds? I don't work.
But have you got any level of income at all that they're measuring this against? Or what I'm trying to say is,
my pension, basically.
Right. So you're on a state pension. Your partner's on a state pension.
Yeah. When Steve is my partner, he's my full-time carer. I need somebody here 24/7 because I can't even make a drink. Right.
Yeah.
So he sees to me for everything, puts me in the shower. Well, it's not a shower, it's a chair over the bath because I can't get in the shower. And he sees to all that. And yet, when we put for carers, he got carers allowance for 3 months. Then he comes 65, and we got a letter through the post, sorry, your carers allowance has been taken away.
So he doesn't get carers allowance for you?
No, he gets nothing at all. Not a penny.
So the pair of you just left to your own devices?
Basically, yeah. I have to pay my physio, which I have once a week, private. She's £80 for an hour. Well, less than an hour, because she's 3/4 of an hour she's here. And then I go to Ramsey to see the psychologist, which is, like I said, is £135 an hour. And it just makes my blood boil. It's not that I want to be scrounging or anything like that. I've never been on the dole. I've always worked, and I just can't understand it.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate you telling us your story today. If anybody's got any idea how we can navigate the way through this, then by all means do get in touch. Thanks, Kay.
All right, Andy, thank you.
Good to hear from you. Well, 25-1 it is. I just wonder what you make of things like that. Where we go, and if Kay's been in touch with various politicians to get a way through this, what happens? Surely that's what the social security net is meant to do. We know, Ali said, we know the agenda with certain civil servants. The majority of road users obey the speed limits, and the majority have consistently refused an all-island limit. So the answer is for the police to make the effort to enforce existing traffic regulations, says Ali. Pavements are for people. Full stop, says Andy, and a message in just to say, you're asked to cycle on the pavement from Fisher's Hill to Gansey, says John. Is there a sign that says that? Thanks also to a WhatsApper who just said Wales has introduced a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Over 500,000 signed a petition, to abolish it. The number's greater than those who voted in the general election, says Chris. £33 million for altering the signs and putting up speed cameras in Wales. Well, that's Wales, I know, but I just wonder what you think here about an all-island speed limit, or indeed speed cameras to stop speeding bluntly. Graham says you're correct. It is illegal to cycle on the pavement. and against the one-way system too. The problem is that it is just never enforced. A couple of fines reported on the news would help. When did you last hear of anybody being fined for riding a bicycle on a pavement? And what do you think about the theory that, if cyclists see other cyclists on the pavement, they just say, well, they can do it, I can do it. And suddenly you get more cyclists on the pavement and it becomes a way. France is bringing in speed cameras that can also detect people on phones and not wearing seatbelts. Thank you for that, WhatsApper. I want to also say DOI Minister Tim Crookall has said that cyclists are not permitted on pavements except those that are cycleways, shared spaces or prescribed pavements. That's DOI Minister Tim Crookall, MHK. Cyclists are not permitted on pavements except those that are cycleways, shared spaces or prescribed pavements. That's the law. And Bonzo's on now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello, yes. Responding to your caller you've just had on now,
yes.
I haven't heard obviously all of the case. I think it's about being not allowed disability living payments.
Yes.
Is that right?
Part of it, yes.
Right. Okay. Well, part of it is right. Now, that to my mind seems like a very clear breach of something called Section 143 of the Equality Act 2017. Duties to promote equality, which essentially give the government an overall duty to, as it states, in the exercise of its functions, have regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, harassment, victimization, any other conduct prohibited by or under the Act, advance equality of opportunity between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and foster good relations between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it. And further down, those characteristics which are protected, then under the subsection 7, are A, age, and B, disability. So, those things would seem to be, by the simple act, as the lady says, of being told, you don't qualify for it because you're over 65. Well, no. I say that's a clear breach.
But you would expect politicians and or civil servants who are conversant with the rules, regulations and laws to act on behalf, to advocate on behalf of the citizen, surely. I mean, the average citizen doesn't know the ins and outs of the regulations. They just expect that fair should be fair, Bonzo.
Well, yes. I think this is one of those things. I think also there was the issue with the case of Eddie and his mobility scooter, wasn't there? On bus vanning. Hello?
You're there? Yes, go on, Bonzo.
Yeah, there was the case of Eddie with his mobility scooter, wasn't there, with bus vanning?
Oh, yeah. So, no, Eric.
Eric, yeah, getting confused. Yes, which I think came under a similar issue, and I seem to recall there was mention of Section 143 in that. So I think it is a question of government looking as if they're doing something, and we've seen this in other areas. Government looking as if they're doing something, legislating to look as if they're doing something, and then making sure that when it's inconvenient, they don't do something. Now, these issues, when it pertains to Social Security, of course, the departmental member handling this, or handles such issues, is Sarah Maltby. And and if she hasn't been in touch with her, I would recommend that the lady gets in touch with her immediately. I'm sure she'd be very concerned about these issues and concerned to pursue the case.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Bonzo.
Thanks again. Bye.
Good to hear from you. A message in from Morgan, who just said, I'm sure you've already picked up on the announced plans for an enormous deep water harbour on the Irish coast, almost on the doorstep of the Isle of Man. Well, relatively on the doorstep. It's been planned for some time to relieve pressure on Dublin port, as a large proportion of goods destined for Northern Ireland already come through Dublin and travel north by road. The project is on the main Dublin to Belfast railway line and on the M1. The M1 in Ireland, of course. The sustainability aims of the project will interest Manx listeners, as it includes a plan to convert wind energy to hydrogen. Some companies already have enormous distribution centres in that area, and companies like Amazon have opened centres in Ireland as part of their European distribution network. Well, the Isle of Man is uniquely placed as a sovereign state to follow the business instead of the money, which has proved ephemeral here. And to look beyond the nearest coast to the east. So Morgan said, I'd advise you to take a look at it. It's called the Port of Drogheda, and the website is droghedaport.ie, droghedaport.ie, all lowercase. This enormous deep water harbour on the Irish coast near Drogheda.
This winter, Manx Petroleum will keep the island warm. For the homemakers, for the bedtime storytellers, for the work-at-homers, and for the careful spenders. This winter, the island's longest-serving distributor will be warming thousands of homes with our premium heating oil. With minimum orders from just 250 litres to keep your outgoings low, Manx Petroleum, always here for you. For details and ordering, visit mp.im.
Discover a fabulous range of watches, gifts and jewellery at Ramsey Art Gallery, with top brand watches from Bulova, Citizen Eco Drive and Storm to Acura, Seconda and Timex. Plus, all watch purchases come with free lifetime watch bracelet adjustment service. There's stunning gold and silver jewellery, gifts for all occasions, and of course a fabulous gallery of limited edition prints and original artworks. Find all this and more at Ramsey Art Gallery, Jewellers and Engravers, opposite Ramsey RNLI shop.
These days, time is a precious commodity. It's difficult to balance work, life and play, but enjoying quality rest and relaxation is essential for our overall well-being. We need downtime, time for ourselves, time for stressless. At Millichaps of Ramsey, most stressless recliners come in multiple sizes for the perfect fit. Relax your body, free your mind, and discover the ultimate in comfort in the stressless studio at Millichaps.
It's a tough time for businesses. Not sure what to do to turn things around? Let Nicola Bowker & Co. guide you through. We've helped hundreds of businesses to success. Accountants and tax advisors to businesses on the Isle of Man.
Opportunity is on its way, and all next week on Manx Radio, you could be a winner as we play The Devil is in the Detail. All you have to do is go to manxradio.com and work out our devil in disguise. There'll be a different one each day, and at the end of the week, we'll give away a Opportunity hamper from ShopRite, crammed full of spectacular goodies, just in time for the 31st of October. The Devil is in the Detail, all next week here on Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
16 minutes before 1. There's a message in from Danny, who just said, what's the protocol regarding the steam packet for fires on board? Well, I didn't tempt fate, but we did contact the steam packet regarding the carriage of electric vehicles, and they have a section on their website in the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, if you want to look at the carriage of electrical vehicles. But their main thrust is that safety is always of the number one priority on the steam packet company. The company is fully compliant with all current local and international regulations for the prevention, detection, containment and extinguishing of fires on its vessels. Voluntarily, the steam packet company has introduced policies and procedures in excess of the requirements in a number of areas and continually reviews its own and industry best practice to ensure the safety of its customers, crews and vessels. So, well, we thank the steam packet for that. It's just a bit vague. How would the steam packet counteract an electric vehicle fire? would it be a blanket? They're talking about these vehicle blankets, electric fire vehicle blankets that you use, or in some places, I think in China, they construct big baths of water. They kind of build a temporary wall around the vehicle and pump water into it and immerse the vehicle in water. Just a thought anyway, Danny. We'll keep on that with the steam packet just to see what it is in detail that they do and what the mitigation is for vehicle fires. I've just got back from Rome, says little Johnny. They've got many more people in a smaller space than we have. They use electric scooters and bikes on roads and paths in the street. Seems to work in Rome. Speeding on the Isle of Man's been going on for many years. I can't understand why we don't have traffic police on the roads every day. It's better than cameras and any flashing signs. I would imagine the Chief Constable would say the cost of it all, because the constabulary would have to pay for traffic police, but I don't think it doesn't correlate. They don't get a cut of the revenue from any fines that are levied, so that would just be a cost for the constabulary to hoover up, and the government would just get all the money. Eddie's on now. Hi, Eddie.
I just heard you talking about electric fires on the Manxman or any of the boats.
Yeah.
The Manxman is about the size of the car park, and it wrecked the whole car park in, was it Birmingham or somewhere, or Luton?
Well, there was a fire in Luton, and nobody seems to know quite what it was, what the vehicle was, whether it was a hybrid, or some people said it was a diesel, other people said it was an EV, but regarding it always...
it was a hybrid diesel.
Yes.
But what happened was, regardless of what started it, the fire was spread and became uncontrollable because the amount of electric cars that also caught fire just blew it all out of proportion. If anything similar to that happened on the Manxman, say, and you had about 50% of the cars electric, wow, the mind boggles.
Well, I mean, first thing, we don't want to tempt fate, but genuinely, I mean, first of all, the steam packet is, it's owned by the taxpayer on the Isle of Man. It is arm's length, but it is funded by the taxpayer ultimately. Yeah. So I think we need to know what it is that would happen if anything like that were to happen. And again, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation, but we're in the world we're in now with electric vehicles, and when they go off, they really go off.
It's right, yeah. What I'm actually trying to get over is the fact that we should be thinking about this before it actually happens, like you say. With everything today, it seems we think afterwards. I would, if we sold one of the boats, say, which is what it sounds like we're going to do, and we had a fire on board the Manxman, the damage that could be done, just looking at what the damage was done at Luton car park, it'd be astronomical.
Well, it's got implications, and I think we're all entitled to know what the implications are, Eddie.
Quite right. Yes. I think somebody should get on top of it, very quick.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eddie.
Okay.
Good to hear from you. Regarding speeding, bad parking and cyclists on pavements, why don't the police get off their backsides and be more proactive? I'm sure they can't just operate independently. I'm sure they're given work rosters and there are priorities. And as I mentioned, there's no correlation between the effort and the money that the police would put in and any fines that would come back. So it's not self-funding. You're asking the police to do something, and there are only a certain number of police. So if they're on traffic duty, they can't do other things. Priorities, isn't it? Maybe it's something we'll ask the Chief Constable. He's in just before Christmas. When the hour goes back, there are many cyclists seen without lights and high-vis clothing. I don't know about you. Do you ever see this much? Cyclists without lights. Well, I'm just trying to think. It's a week on Sunday, isn't it? The clocks go back a week on Sunday, 29th of October. Yeah, it's a week on Sunday. Because 2 weeks today is Hop Tuesday. So a week on Sunday, the clocks go back, and it'll be dark nights. Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Andy. Yes, I've just got the turn up this morning to make our great-granddaughter her hop tune.
Good.
And she insisted on it being a hop tunate, not a pumpkin. That's not bad for a 6-year-old.
That's fantastic.
I got a pumpkin last year for her, but she said, I want a turnip next year. So, but no, what I was talking to Chris, and I think the chap that was just on before was saying about Luton Airport. It was, they say, a hybrid. In other words, it's still an EV vehicle, but a half and half job.
Yeah.
Because the way the fire was burning was all underneath at the front left-hand side, where the battery apparently on the Land Rovers are positioned. But that aside, now it's going to go on for years, this, because it'll end up as a class action, because there'll be an awful lot of people. There's something like 1,400 vehicles that have been written off, and they're talking 30 million plus for damage to cars, and what we're forgetting, the car park will have to be rebuilt, which is all part and parcel of the same action. So we're talking serious money. But when you mentioned a minute ago about on board the ships, the Ben or the Sea Cat or otherwise, I know it's impossible at the present moment, but somewhere on board these ships they're going to have to build a secure area, what we term as a hazardous cargo. When they have the high vis on the front of the ship up on the bridge, it's carrying hazardous cargo. And with the EVs, they are now becoming what you term as hazardous cargoes. Because I was watched a video the other night of them trying to put a fire out on an EV, and it went out but reignited and kept reigniting because it generates its own oxygen. You can stifle oxygen. As I say, there's a source of heat, a source of material, and something else, I can't remember what it was now. We were always taught this, the means of a fire. You can deplete the oxygen, you can do other actions, but an EV vehicle batteries are a totally new game, and the fire service will tell you exactly that, because they do generate their own oxygen and they can recreate themselves time and time again.
I think the answer in all this, Howard, is going to be the insurance companies. Nothing happens without the insurance companies say so. If you can't get insurance, it doesn't happen. So I think we can look to them for a lead.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned there at Drogheda, hydrogen. They're also talking about ammonia for propulsion units. But Toyota are very heavy into hydrogen. And although they're advertising on the telly for EVs and hybrids, etc., they're going down the road of hydrogen. Same as JCB, because their heavy plant, etc., just will not run. Well, it would, but you'd have to have a battery in one of those things as heavy as the load it was carrying. But, as I say, with the steam packet, they come up and they're answering quite correctly. They are abiding by the regulations and rules. Yeah. And as I said last week, if there are no regulations and rules as such by a government body, that is very easy to comply with. And they are safeguarding what they consider their right way of doing things. But if there's legislation in, they've got to have it. So on board these vessels somewhere, there's going to have a safe area where you can park electric vehicles. Okay. That'll be self-contained and, virtually fireproof.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Howard.
Just as one other afterthought, that large ship that had the fire on quite recently, the car carrier, they were lifting cars off that ship and they were putting them into large, specially built skips full of water and allowing them to burn themselves out.
Yeah.
So we don't want to go down that road particularly.
Okay, thanks, Howard.
Okay, take care. Bye.
All right, it's 5-1.
Have you been invited to take part in the Household Income and Expenditure Survey? It's one of the most important surveys for our island because the information you provide is vital data for our island's financial planning. It helps us calculate our VAT revenue from the UK. Plus, it gives us a better understanding of the financial strains on residents, so we can support those who are struggling. If you've been invited, please take part. Visit gov.im/HIES for more information.
Are you concerned about your eye health? Holmes & Davidson Opticians in Douglas are proud to offer the Eidon ultra-wide field retinal imaging and Heidelberg 4D OCT systems, state-of-the-art machines that allow early detection and management of eye diseases. Don't wait. Book your appointment today and ensure the health of your eyes with the best technology available. Call 676 230 or visit holmesanddavidsonopticians.co.uk now.
Whether you like live music, theatre, film, or running around in circles pretending to be a superhero, you'll love Villa Gaiety. With Dragon's Castle Play Area, Broadway Cinema, Gaiety Theatre and the Villa Marina. Check out the upcoming events at villagaiety.com or call 600 555. Villa Gaiety, the island's premier entertainment venue.
Got a message in from Shona. She said, I simply can't get the idea of herring mash out of my head. Never had it, never heard of it before. But herring mash sounds fantastic. No doubt some enterprising restaurateur will tell us about it. Yes, Ken dropped a note in. Radars in France can now fine drivers for up to 15 offences, including illegal manoeuvres, seatbelt and mobile phone usage. Treasury Minister was talking about getting on and off the island, says Helen. This not only affects people, but now our mails dependent on the ferries, delays of days rather than hours. Well, that's the future, Helen. Thanks for that. Good to hear from you. Thanks for getting in touch. Thanks for all the messages. We're back tomorrow talking Visit Isle of Man. Thanks to Chris today.
WINT